You are completely misinterpreting the true cause of your stagnation, attributing your lack of progress to a deep-seated laziness that doesn't actually exist. We have been conditioned to believe that the bridge between a life of mediocrity and a life of extraordinary achievement is built on massive, exhausting, monumental shifts in behavior. We tell ourselves that tomorrow we will wake up as a completely different person, that we will suddenly possess the titanic willpower to overturn decades of deeply ingrained habits in a single, heroic effort. But this expectation is a dangerous delusion that sets you up for a repetitive cycle of failure, self-reproach, and eventual despair. The real tragedy is not that you lack the desire to change, but that you are attempting to move a mountain by throwing yourself against the stone until you break. The hidden truth most people never realize until their twilight years is that your destiny is not shaped by the grand, dramatic gestures you plan to make tomorrow, but by the tiny, seemingly insignificant windows of time you negotiate away today. There is a precise, invisible threshold where potential either hardens into reality or evaporates into regret, and it takes exactly 300 seconds to cross it. If you do not understand the mechanics of this brief window, every ambition you hold will eventually become a phantom that haunts you. But here is where it gets dangerous. The human mind is an exquisite machine designed for survival, not for peak performance, and its primary mechanism for keeping you safe is the slow, systematic assassination of your momentum. The moment an idea, an inspiration, or a necessary task flashes across your consciousness, an invisible clock begins to tick. You have a remarkably narrow corridor of time to move from thought to physical execution before your brain recognizes the discomfort of growth and deploys an army of rationalizations to shut it down. We call this critical corridor the 5-minute rule, a fundamental law of human behavior that dictates the trajectory of your entire life based on how you handle the first 300 seconds of resistance. Most people believe that the struggle for success is a lifelong, grueling war fought on a massive battlefield. But the reality is much more granular. The war is fought and won, or fought and lost, in the small, quiet space between an impulse to act and the decision to delay. If you lose that brief micro-battle, the rest of the day is already lost. And if you lose enough days, an entire lifetime slips through your fingers without you ever realizing the leak. What happened next in the life of a young man decades ago perfectly illustrates the hidden trap of this psychological law. He was 25 years old, working a dead-end job as a clerk, and drowning in a sea of unfulfilled promises. He had a beautiful wife, a young child, and a mountain of bills that arrived with terrifying punctuality every single month. He considered himself a hard worker, someone who was willing to sweat and sacrifice, yet his pockets were entirely empty and his spirit was rapidly eroding. He spent his evenings sitting at his kitchen table, staring at his past due notices, desperately wishing for a miracle, waiting for the government to lower taxes, waiting for his employer to recognize his hidden genius, waiting for the economy to magically shift in his favor. He was trapped in the agonizing paralysis of waiting for a grand savior to arrive and pull him out of the mud. He didn't realize that his entire life was being dictated by a subtle, unconscious habit of hesitation that occurred every single time an opportunity for self-improvement presented itself. He would think about reading a book on philosophy or economics, but within a few minutes, he would convince himself that he was too tired, that he would start fresh on Monday, or that he needed to rest. He was giving his brain the time it needed to build a fortress of excuses. The real lesson came later, on a crisp autumn morning, when this young man finally met the individual who would completely shatter his worldview. His name was Earl Schoaf, a man of immense wealth, profound wisdom, and an unmistakable aura of grounded authority. In their very first conversation, the young man, whose name was Jim Rohn, poured out his heart, listing all the reasons why his life was a mess. He blamed the high cost of living, the lack of capital, the unfairness of the marketplace, and the sheer exhaustion that kept him from pursuing his dreams. Schoaf listened in patient silence, letting the young man exhaust his list of grievances. When Jim was finally done, Schoaf looked at him with eyes that seemed to pierce right through his defenses and said something that changed everything. He said, "Young man, your list of excuses is highly creative, but it has one fatal flaw. It doesn't contain your name. If you want things to change, you have to change. If you want things to get better, you have to get better. The problem isn't the wind that blows on you. The problem is how you set your sail. And right now, you are letting your sail flap in the wind because you take too long to make a move." Most people never realize this, But the difference between wealth and poverty, between fulfillment and regret, is a matter of philosophical alignment, not physical capacity. Shove sat Jim down and introduced him to a concept that seemed almost too simple to be true, yet it contained the weight of ancient law. He explained that failure is not a single cataclysmic event that happens overnight. You do not wake up one morning and suddenly find your business bankrupted, your health destroyed, and your relationships ruined. Failure is nothing more than a few simple errors in judgment, repeated every single day. It is the decision to ignore the book you should have read, to skip the walk you should have taken, to delay the phone call you should have made. And conversely, success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every single day. The pivot point between an error in judgment and a discipline of success is found in that initial 5-minute window of hesitation. When you delay a discipline for 5 minutes, you are not just skipping a task. You are casting a vote for a philosophy of failure. You are training your mind to accept delay as a legitimate form of survival. This is where the hidden trap appears, cloaked in the guise of logic and self-preservation. When an idea for a positive action strikes you, whether it is writing that business plan, opening that study material, or stepping out into the cold morning air for a run, your mind instantly perceives it as a threat to your current state of comfort. The brain is an ancient biological computer designed to conserve energy and avoid friction. It doesn't care about your long-term wealth, your self-respect, or your desire to leave a legacy. It only cares about keeping you safe and warm in the immediate present. If you give yourself 5 minutes of idle time to contemplate the action, your brain will successfully build a highly sophisticated, rational defense mechanism against it. It will tell you that you don't have enough information yet, that you need to do more research, that the timing isn't quite right, or that you are simply too burnt out to perform at your best. This is not laziness. It is the natural, automated biological resistance to change. The mistake we make is treating this internal resistance as a dialogue, a conversation where we have a voice, when in reality, it is a trap designed to lock you in place forever. The young Jim Rohn listened to this explanation, feeling a profound mixture of intense discomfort and exhilarating clarity. He looked back at his last 5 years of adulthood and saw a long, unbroken highway of 5-minute surrenders. He saw the hundreds of times he had delayed an uncomfortable task by just a few moments, only to watch that task disappear entirely from his schedule. He realized that he had been waiting for an emotional wave of motivation to carry him into action, not understanding that motivation is a consequence of action, never the cause of it. You do not wait until you feel like changing your life before you begin. You begin acting so that you can finally change the way you feel. Shove told him, Jim, the major difference between the highly successful person and the struggling person is that the successful person has learned to master the first 5 minutes of discomfort. They don't wait for the fear, the doubt, or the fatigue to vanish. They recognize that those feelings are mandatory taxes that must be paid at the border of execution, and they pay them immediately by moving their body before their mind can vote against them. Consider the profound metaphor of the seed and the soil, an analogy that Jim Rohn would later share with millions of seekers across the globe. The soil is completely indifferent to your intent. It doesn't care if you have a magnificent vision for a harvest. It doesn't care if you are a good person, and it doesn't care how hard you plan to work next month. The soil only responds to the physical planting of the seed. If you hold the seed in your hand, admiring its potential, debating the best angle to drop it into the dirt, waiting for the weather to be absolutely flawless, the seed will eventually rot in your palm. The act of planting requires a definitive, unhesitating rupture of your current state of comfort. It requires you to dig into the cold, dark earth right now. Most people spend their entire lives standing at the edge of the field, holding a bag of brilliant seeds, waiting for an external sign to begin. They allow 5 minutes of hesitation to turn into 5 hours of distraction, which turns into 5 years of stagnation. The harvest doesn't belong to those who plan. It belongs strictly to those who plant without allowing the intellect to talk them out of the labor. But let's look at this through a deeper, more chilling lens. The slow, agonizing passing of time and the accumulation of unfulfilled potential. There is a specific kind of quiet misery that belongs exclusively to the person who knows exactly what they are capable of achieving, yet chooses to watch the clock tick away their life in increments of short delays. Every time you allow that 5-minute window of hesitation to defeat you, a small piece of your self-respect dies. You are making a silent declaration to your subconscious mind that your dreams are negotiable, that your word means nothing, and that your comfort is far more valuable than your future. This is how a human being gradually hollows themselves out from the inside. They look in the mirror at 40, 50, or 60 years old and see a stranger looking back, a person surrounded by the ghosts of the books they never wrote, the businesses they never started, and the disciplines they never mastered. The pain of discipline is incredibly light, weighing only ounces, but the weight of regret is a crushing burden that weighs literal tons. You must choose which weight you are going to carry today, because you cannot escape both. The real transformation begins when you learn to treat that initial 5-minute window as an absolute battleground, a border crossing where no negotiations are permitted under any circumstances. When the impulse to execute a high-value task arises, you must develop a visceral, almost physical intolerance for hesitation. You do not pause to check your emotions, you do not check your messages, and you do not ask yourself if you feel like doing it. You simply move. If you need to write, your fingers must hit the keyboard within the first 60 seconds. If you need to make a critical call, your fingers must dial the numbers before your mind can conjure up an image of rejection. If you need to study, the book must be opened, and your eyes must be scanning the print immediately. This is the implementation of a concept we call the 0-second delay. By reducing the time between the command of your intellect and the movement of your physical vessel, you completely bypass the brain's defensive, excuse-generating factory. You catch your biology off guard, establishing momentum before the resistance even realizes the war has started. What happens next when you consistently apply this rule is nothing short of a miracle of human engineering. Momentum is a powerful, compounding force that works both ways. When you surrender to hesitation, you build momentum toward a lifestyle of passivity, distraction, and low self-esteem. But when you force yourself through that initial 5 minutes of friction, a remarkable chemical and psychological shift occurs. The moment your body begins to perform the action, the resistance that seemed so terrifying and insurmountable just a moment ago begins to lose its grip. The brain realizes that its defense mechanisms have failed, so it adapts to the new reality by releasing the focus, the clarity, and the energy required to finish what you started. The hardest part of any journey is not the miles you travel. It is the act of turning the key in the ignition. The 5-minute rule is the key. Once the engine is running, the journey becomes self-sustaining. You discover that you didn't need more motivation all along. You simply needed to strip away the window of time that allowed your doubts to speak over your vision. Let us engage in a candid thought experiment to expose the sheer magnitude of what you are sacrificing to this subtle trap every single day. Imagine an invisible auditor sitting in the corner of your room, meticulously tracking your time with a stopwatch. Every single time you experience a useful thought or recognize a necessary discipline, the auditor starts the clock. Every moment you spend adjusting your chair, checking your notifications, getting a glass of water to delay the work, or scrolling through media to find the perfect playlist before you start, the auditor logs it as a surrender. If you calculate the total amount of time spent in that agonizing, toxic space between knowing what you should do and actually doing it, you will make an alarming discovery. You aren't lacking time. You have plenty of hours in your day. What you are lacking is a swift transition. You are burning hours of mental energy just trying to convince yourself to perform a 30-minute task. The exhaustion you feel at the end of the day isn't from the work you did. It is from the immense, draining civil war fought inside your head every time you tried to get yourself to start. This realization brings us to a profound hidden principle regarding the true nature of human value. The world does not pay you for what you know. It pays you for what you execute. There are millions of brilliant, highly educated, deeply knowledgeable individuals who are completely broke, frustrated, and living in obscurity because they have spent their lives accumulating information without ever mastering the art of immediate application. They are library shelves packed with gold leaf, yet covered in thick dust because they allow 5 minutes of perfectionism to paralyze their execution. Perfectionism is merely a socially acceptable, sophisticated form of cowardice. It is the sophisticated excuse we use to stay at the starting line, hiding our fear of judgment behind a desire to make everything flawless before we begin. But a flawed execution that begins within 5 minutes is worth infinitely more to the marketplace than a flawless plan that takes 5 weeks to ponder. The marketplace rewards the messy, imperfect, courageous starters who understand that refinement happens during the journey, never at the starting line. Think about the sheer power of an unyielding routine, a daily ritual that refuses to grant hesitation a seat at the table. Jim Rohn used to reflect on the nature of the seasons, noting that winter always follows autumn, and opportunity always follows difficulty. The seasons do not pause to ask if the earth is ready for them. They arrive with absolute mathematical certainty. Your personal disciplines must mirror this cosmic regularity. When you establish a rule that eliminates the gap between intention and action, you remove the burden of decision-making from your daily life. You no longer have to debate whether you are going to work on your dreams today, because the decision was already made weeks ago. You simply execute when the time arrives, with the same mechanical certainty that causes the sun to rise in the east. This level of self-mastery is not cold or mechanical. It is the ultimate expression of personal freedom. It is the realization that your higher intellect, your deep vision, and your highest self are in absolute control of your life, while your fleeting, unreliable emotions are forced to sit in the back seat where they belong. Most people never realize this, but the environment you inhabit is constantly conspiring to expand that 5-minute window of hesitation into an eternity of distraction. We are living in an era where billions of dollars are spent by hyper-sophisticated corporations, specifically to engineer platforms that capture your attention the moment you hesitate. The exact second you pause before a difficult task, your hand instinctively reaches for your device, seeking a quick, effortless hit of dopamine to escape the temporary friction of focus. You click on a video, you scroll through a feed, you check a message, and before you can even process what happened, 45 minutes of your irreplaceable life have been traded away for absolutely nothing. You have been ambushed in the corridor of hesitation. If you do not view that initial 5-minute window as a hostile environment requiring maximum vigilance, you will remain an easy target for these digital predators. You must build a wall around your first 5 minutes, turning it into a sacred zone where your phone is face down, your tabs are closed, and your physical body is moving toward the work with total, uncompromised intent. Let us confront the painful reality of missed opportunities, the moments that slip by because we assumed the window would stay open forever. Opportunity is an incredibly sensitive, elusive guest. It knocks on your door, but it doesn't linger on your porch for hours waiting for you to finish your internal debate. It doesn't care if you need to gather your courage. It doesn't care if you need to consult your friends. And it doesn't care if you want to wait for a more convenient season. It knocks once, and if it hears hesitation, if it senses that you are an individual who needs 5 days or even 5 minutes to decide whether you want to step into the arena, it quietly walks away and knocks on the door of someone who is dressed, ready, and willing to leap without a safety net. The history of the world is written by individuals who had the exact same ideas you have right now, but who won the 5-minute race against their own doubts. They weren't smarter than you, they weren't more talented than you, and they didn't have access to better resources. They were simply faster to cross the line from contemplation to commitment. The hidden truth behind this entire philosophy is that your self-image is formed entirely by your behavior, not by your intentions. You can spend hours visualizing yourself as a powerful, disciplined, successful leader. But if your behavior consists of repeatedly choosing comfort over friction every time the clock strikes execution, your subconscious mind will completely reject your visualization. It knows the truth. It knows that when the pressure is on, you surrender to the first 5 minutes of resistance. To transform your identity at the deepest level, you must provide your mind with undeniable physical evidence of your discipline. You must show it that when you say you are going to do something, your body moves immediately, without a single moment of internal bargaining. Every single time you push through the initial 5 minutes of a difficult task, you are rewriting the script of who you are. You are proving to yourself that you are a producer, not a consumer, a creator, not a spectator, a master of your circumstances, not a victim of your biology. The true majesty of human life is revealed when you realize that the ultimate reward of discipline is not the material wealth, the public acclaim, or the external trophies you accumulate along the way. Those things are merely pleasant side effects. The true reward is the person you become in the process of mastering yourself. When you master the first 5 minutes, you develop an unshakable, rock-solid core of inner confidence that can never be taken away from you by an economic downturn, a personal betrayal, or a shift in the marketplace. You know what you are made of. You know that you possess the rare, invaluable capacity to look at a mountain of cold, heavy friction and begin climbing immediately, without waiting for permission or applause. This level of self-respect is the highest currency in the world. It gives you a presence, a clarity of thought, and an aura of quiet strength that commands respect from everyone who crosses your path. It allows you to walk through life with your head held high, knowing that you are no longer a slave to your fleeting moods, but the absolute captain of your soul. Look back at the trajectory of your life up to this exact moment. Think of all the projects, all the dreams, all the healthy routines, and all the financial plans that you have allowed to slip away simply because you gave your doubts too much time to speak during that initial 5-minute window. Do not allow yourself to feel a sense of paralyzing guilt over the past, but do allow yourself to feel the sharp, necessary sting of constructive regret. Let that regret fuel a deep, unyielding decision within your spirit right now. Understand that the past cannot be rewritten, but your relationship with the next 5 minutes is completely up to you. You are standing at a major crossroads in this very moment. You can close this video and immediately slide back into your old habits of slow delay, casual hesitation, and long conversations with your resistance. Or you can make a solemn, unbreakable pact with yourself that from this hour forward, you will live your life with a 0-second delay. You will treat the first 5 minutes of every single discipline as a sacred threshold that must be crossed with absolute speed and uncompromised force. The clock is ticking down, and the world is waiting to see what you are going to do with the next 300 seconds of your life. Do not wait for a perfect feeling that will never arrive. Do not wait for a mentor to hold your hand, or for the economy to settle, or for the distractions to vanish on their own. They are not coming to save you. You must save yourself. Take a deep, purposeful breath, square your shoulders, and face the friction of your immediate duties with a quiet, fierce determination. Open the book, dial the number, start the project, write the first sentence, take the first step. For over the course of an entire life, the difference between an ordinary existence lived in the shadows of regret and an extraordinary masterpiece lived in the light of fulfillment comes down to a single, simple, uncompromising choice. You must master the first 5 minutes, or you must accept a life where your fears master you. The threshold is right in front of you. Step across it now, do it without looking back, and watch as your entire world transforms around your courage.